911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Yes. We need a car here at 1231 Temple Drive, Winter Park, Florida. There's a woman that's a danger to herself and to others right now.
This audio recording was made in the evening of January 11th, 2019, when Michael Redlick would call 911 to frantically report a woman who posed a danger to herself and to others. Without providing more information, he told the operator that he would call back in 5 minutes, as his attention was drawn away from the call by this dangerous woman. But Michael would never make that second call. In fact, this would be the last call he ever made, and the last anyone would ever hear from Michael, because by the next morning, Michael was dead.
I don't know. I think my husband's deceased. There's been a tragedy at my home.
What's the address up there?
1231 Temple Drive, Winter Park.
What's going on at 1231 Temple Drive?
I believe my husband is deceased.
Okay. And why do you believe he's deceased?
Because he's been, he's stiff and he's wounded. He might have had a heart attack. I don't know.
Okay. Did you just find him?
No, actually, it happened last night.
It happened last night?
Correct.
Okay. How old is your husband?
He's 65.
So did you find him this morning? Because I know you said that you believed it happened last night. Did you see him last night? Was he okay, or was...
He was not okay last night. We had altercation, and he stabbed himself, and I ran into the bathroom, and then when I came out, I tried to help him, and I saw he was lying in blood. And then I tried to help him, and I couldn't. Correct, yes. And then I tried to help him, and I woke up with sitting up next to him, and I've been trying to figure out what to do.
Right. So you all had an altercation last night, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Are there any weapons on scene now?
A knife.
A knife?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Danielle, let me ask you this. So did he stab himself last night and he passed last night and you just didn't know what to do?
Correct, I believe so, yes.
Okay. Were you all drinking?
He was. And altercation was the night before too, but I left the house and took my children with me because he was drinking them too.
Mm-hmm. Were your kids there last night during this altercation?
No, they were not. They were not here, and they're not here now.
I know you first said that you thought he had a heart attack. So do you think it was a heart attack, or do you think it was due to the stabbing that he passed away?
Probably the stabbing triggered it, I guess. I don't know. It's a shoulder wound.
You say it's a shoulder wound?
Right.
How old are you, huh?
I'm 45.
The next morning, Michael's wife, Danielle Redlick, made this call to report Michael's death. When she was asked about what had happened, she would describe an altercation that had taken place the night before, and she states that she thinks her husband may have stabbed himself. But what left investigators puzzled was the fact that Michael had been killed more than 11 hours before the call was made. And as the events of that night were exposed, we would come to learn much about Danielle and Michael's twisted relationship. But what would ultimately be revealed would be more shocking and unexpected than anyone could have predicted. Was this a case of a battered woman protecting herself, or was it cold-blooded murder? Before we begin, we would like to send our sincere condolences to the friends and loved ones of Michael Redlick, who fell victim to the abominable acts described in this case. Today's video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Considered one of the best RPG mobile games around, Raid Shadow Legends is the first game to bring a true console-level experience to your phone. Explore millions of champion combinations and master countless tactics while taking on raid bosses, dungeon runs, campaign battles, and PvP arena matches. One of our favorite things about Raid is the number of champions to choose from. So not only does the game never get old, but I can build champions and teams specifically to fit my playstyle. To give you an idea, here are my 3 top favorites and a few you might want to check out yourself. Third place on my list is the tried and true favorite Baracus the Shifter. If he ever goes below 40% health, that damage increases by a factor of 40%. This makes him a perfect champion for both aggressive and defensive gameplay. Second on my list is Ramontu Drake's Blood, one of the best champions for fighting bosses in the game. As for my number 1, right now that's the Ultimate Death Knight, one of the best all-around legends in the game. Not only does he have more than 20,000 health, but his skills allow him to inflict fear and weakness on enemies. As an added bonus, the Ultimate Death Knight can give himself and his teammates a continuous shield and health buff, but these are just my personal favorites. Get this champion by logging in for 7 days from now until October 28th. With so many to choose from, you'll want to experience them firsthand when you try the game out for yourself. And this is the perfect time to do that, because Raid has just released a giant new feature called Awakening, which includes a brutal new dungeon. If you're able to take down the Iron Twin Fortress, you'll be able to awaken your champions, which means choosing a powerful blessing that can transform how they perform in battle. I have been loving experimenting with the crazy new benefits and effects of this feature, and still have a ton to test out. When I'm not busy working on our latest true crime case, that is, use the promo code DKRISES and get a handful of free items and instantly level your new strongest champion all the way to level 50. This promo is available to new and existing players, and if you haven't started Raid yet, you can click on the link in the description or scan our QR code here on the screen. These bonuses include the free Epic Champion Aina, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill and 1 XP boost, and 1 ancient shard. All this treasure will be waiting for you here. Danielle Redlick was born in 1976 in Florida. Despite her mother and father separating when she was young, her early years were spent in a loving and safe home. Danielle attended the University of Central Florida, where she graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in interdisciplinary studies majoring in communication. She went on to complete psychology papers and a photography certification. Danielle was, by all accounts, an intelligent and ambitious woman. When Danielle was around 22 years old, her mother Kathleen met Michael Redlick. Michael was known as Red by his friends, given his last name. He was a nice guy with a big smile and an even bigger heart. It was his generosity and kindness that initially attracted Kathleen. The couple seemed content together, and by all accounts their relationship was a happy one. He was supportive and encouraging to Kathleen. Michael loved being sort of a stepfather to Kathleen's children, as he had none of his own. Even though he and Kathleen were not traditionally married, Michael fit in well to the fatherly and husbandly role for Kathleen's family. 2 of Danielle's siblings lived with the couple, while the other 3 lived with their father. By now, Danielle was living away at college, but she would regularly visit her mother, her siblings, and her stepfather, Michael. While Michael was a qualified lawyer in the years before he met Kathleen, he experienced great success as a businessman. During his relationship with Kathleen, he held a number of executive positions in professional sports organizations such as the Cleveland Browns and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But in 1997, tragedy struck when Danielle's mother, Kathleen, was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. Kathleen, Michael, and the 6 children were devastated. Not only did they face losing their mother, but they were also in no financial position to pay for her treatment. With her humble background, Kathleen didn't have the funds to pay for her own health care. But Michael wasn't going to give up on Kathleen without a fight. and he decided their best course of action was to get married so Kathleen could be entitled to his own health care benefits. With his executive position, his health care package would cover all expenses related to treating Kathleen's cancer, and once she was cured, they could continue on as normal. They had been together just 2 years. Kathleen loved Michael deeply, but they both knew their shotgun marriage was one of convenience in hopes that the modern healthcare system would help save her life. But devastatingly, Kathleen's breast cancer had progressed to stage 4. Despite trying every available treatment, Kathleen was told she only had months to live. Just months after getting married, Kathleen sadly passed away from the terrible illness. Danielle had been very close to her mom, and she was devastated by her death and worried about how her siblings would cope with losing their mother. Michael was left to care for her 2 younger siblings who had been living with him and Kathleen. He reached out to Danielle and asked if she wanted to move into one of the spare rooms of the house that he had lived in with Kathleen. He hoped that Danielle could be a mother figure to her younger sister and help her through the loss of Kathleen. Danielle's sister was in the final year of high school and was traumatized by the loss of her mother. They agreed that having Danielle close by would provide some familiarity and stability while she finished her senior year. Danielle moved in, and initially their relationship revolved around completing the domestic chores for the home and providing emotional support for each other and to Danielle's sister. Michael encouraged Danielle and provided career guidance. His many years of experience in business put him at an advantageous position to guide Danielle as she set out into the working world. As Danielle began to rely on Michael more and more for emotional support, their relationship changed from amicable and fatherly to romantic and sexual. Danielle was working as a part-time bartender while she studied, and as their relationship began to change, Michael would show up during her shifts. He would order a drink and they would chat while Danielle served the other customers. Soon, Michael began to take Danielle out with him to various activities and events. Initially, it seemed innocent enough, and Danielle thought of it more as bonding. That was until Michael began buying Danielle gifts and spending more time with her than anyone else. Danielle had become infatuated with him, and when Michael introduced Danielle to one of his business contacts, she secured her first professional job, and she felt indebted to him. Over a period of months, their once platonic stepfather-stepdaughter relationship turned into something much more physical. Soon, they were in a full-on romantic relationship. It was Danielle's first experience with a long-term relationship, and she truly believed she was in love with him. But she was smart enough to know that given Michael's history as her stepfather, her friends and family would struggle to accept them as a couple. So initially, Danielle and Michael decided not to make their relationship status public for fear of public criticism. By then, Michael had secured a position as the executive vice president of the NBA basketball team, the Memphis Grizzlies. This meant he would need to move from Cleveland to Memphis. When he first raised the issue of the move to Danielle and asked her to go with him, she declined. She knew moving with Michael would mean that her family would find out about their relationship. While they had been romantically involved for 2 years, she wasn't sure she was ready for that level of scrutiny. She supported Michael moving and decided that instead of moving with him, she would just visit frequently until she felt ready to go public with their relationship. When Michael moved to Memphis, he would fly Danielle out to see him every weekend, and she would touch down at the airport. Michael would pick her up and take her on a whirlwind romantic date before she had to return back to her normal life with her sister in Cleveland.
He took me to a place called Mud Island where it's a beautiful neighborhood on the Mississippi River in Memphis, and he pulled up to a home and he went inside and he said, "I bought this for us." And it was a beautiful house, it had a pool, and it was on the river. And so from there, I went ahead and made the decision to go ahead and move to Memphis.
So you were there on a visit and he told you that he'd already bought a home for you?
Yes.
Or for you together?
Right.
Okay. At this point, how was the relationship?
It was good. I mean, like I said, odd circumstances how we came together, but it was good. We enjoyed our time together.
And how did the rest of the family view this at that point?
I think the sister that was living with us, I think she took it kind of hard, which I don't blame her. I think people were a little bit shocked, but other than that, didn't have much to say about it.
On one such visit, Michael drove Danielle to a beautiful home in the suburbs of Memphis. As they pulled up outside, he declared that he had purchased the home for her and wanted her to leave Cleveland and join him once and for all. Danielle was flattered and agreed to move out to live with Michael full-time. In a new city with new surroundings, they could finally be seen as a legitimate couple. With their newfound freedom, they decided to formalize their relationship, and in the early 2000s, the couple got married. There was no hiding from the criticism of friends and family, but the newlyweds presented themselves as a loving and dedicated couple determined to prove the cynics wrong. But even with their newfound freedom and determination to succeed, Danielle and Michael's relationship was far from perfect. Danielle was new to a long-term relationship, while Michael, who was 21 years older than her, had years of experience. He maintained a position of seniority over Danielle throughout their marriage. While Danielle was trying to make her own way in the professional world, Michael was already successful and had an established career. But the couple seemed to overcome their difficulties and went on to have 2 children together, who they named Jaden and Sawyer. Michael took to fatherhood just as he had with Danielle's siblings. He was a hands-on father, and despite the pressures of his professional role, he was able to support the children in any way he could. But as time went on and the children reached high school age, Danielle began to notice that Michael wasn't as romantic or as available as he had once been. She suspected he was cheating on her, and when she confronted him about it, her worst fears were confirmed. Michael admitted that he had been cheating on her. Despite the hurt and betrayal of infidelity, and on top of everything that had already happened between the couple, Danielle wanted to provide her children with a stable home, unlike what she had been raised in. So Danielle decided to stay with Michael and try to put their problems behind them. And in an effort to save their marriage, the couple agreed to therapy, both together and separately. But the damage had already been done. The trust was gone, and the couple fought often. Their frequent screaming matches soon turned into physical fights, and often their 2 young children would be witnesses as their parents kicked and scratched at each other. The home was filled with tension and discomfort for everyone, and Danielle was faced with a hard choice: to stay or to go. Danielle decided that she had had enough of Michael's ongoing infidelity and their endless fights. Eventually, the couple would separate and begin living their lives in separate homes. Michael was furious and began to turn against Danielle. He threatened that he would stop paying the bills on the home that they had once shared, and he cut Danielle off from being able to access their joint accounts. He told her he would go for full custody of the children and kick her out of the house that he was paying for, forcing her to return to Cleveland. And yet, Michael also claimed he wanted to reconcile. He told Danielle that if she let him move back in, he would continue to pay for everything. After a few months of separation, in 2018, Danielle filed for divorce. But the judge in the case rejected the divorce filing as Michael had not been properly served with the papers. Michael had managed to dodge the process servers on a number of occasions. On one occasion, he visited Danielle and begged her for one more chance to fix their marriage for the sake of their children. He promised he would change, and Danielle believed him. As the server turned up to deliver the papers to Michael, the couple were engaged in relations. Once again, Michael had avoided being served, and this time it was with Danielle's help. As they attempted to reconcile their marriage, Michael began to invite Danielle over for dinner at his condo. He started to take her on dates again and lavished her with gifts and expensive restaurants. Danielle was confused by the status of their relationship. In her mind, they were separated, and both were trying to rebuild their relationship. At the same time, she was suspicious that Michael had an ulterior motive or was potentially still seeing other women. When she stumbled across a letter Michael had written, Danielle's confusion turned to anger.
How do you feel at this point? After reviewing that, what's your mindset?
I'm shook up by it because I was surprised that he was saying this when we were clearly trying to get on better. And
Is what you're seeing there matching the interactions that you were having with your husband?
no,
After observing that, after having this experience, did you speak with Michael about it? Did you confront him about what you had found?
yes, I asked him about it.
And is that what leads to this email exchange?
Yes.
But could it have been this anger that led her to commit murder? Or had the years of conflict and abuse led Danielle to reaching a breaking point, leaving her with no choice but to defend herself against an attack by Michael? Michael and Danielle had been together for 18 years. They had been married 15 years when Michael died on the night of January 12, 2019. After Danielle's call, police arrived and it was immediately clear that Michael was dead and had been for some time. Rather than dying from a heart attack, authorities could see clearly that Michael had been stabbed to death. He was lying in a pool of his own blood, which looked as if it had been recently disturbed. There were bloody towels strewn across the floor in the vicinity of the body and throughout the home. The home smelled of cleaning products, and it looked like Michael's body was recently moved due to smears of blood on the floor. Danielle was in a frantic state when the police arrived, and she was taken to a psychiatric ward where she could be assessed for risk of self-harm. Meanwhile, an investigation began, and the family home was cordoned off as a crime scene.
Refer to everything we see here as suspected blood because you haven't done some tests to actually truly confirm that it's blood.
That is true.
But it's a pretty strong suspicion.
Yes.
Okay.
When Danielle was released from the psychiatric ward, she returned home. Michael's autopsy showed that he had died from a single stab wound to the chest, and that he would have died within 5 or 6 minutes of sustaining the injury. These facts did not line up with Danielle's version of events, and now she was considered a prime suspect for murder. A search warrant was carried out on Danielle's home, and she continued to deny that she had murdered her husband. Based on police interviews with Danielle and her strange behavior and demeanor after the fight with her husband, she was charged with second-degree murder. Despite having offered a plea deal to plead guilty to manslaughter in exchange for a reduced sentence of 10 years, Danielle decided to take the case to trial. And it was during that trial that the disturbing details of what happened inside their suburban home finally came to light. According to Danielle, she was in the fight for her life. There was no denying that she was the one who stabbed Michael, but her entire case rested on a claim of self-defense.
Ms. Redlick, on January 11th, 2019, did you stab your husband?
I did. Yes.
That he ended up pushing her to the ground,
And then did she get up?
Yes.
What did he do next, according to Ms. Redlick?
Pushed her head against the stove and began like covering her mouth with her face with his hands, yelling and screaming at her.
So can you kind of describe what you understood her to be saying Mr. Redlick was doing with his hand?
Like just covering, like smushing his hands over her mouth.
Okay. She was not describing being choked.
Correct, she wasn't.
Did she say whether or not Mr. Redlick struck her at any point during the sequence of events?
No, just smudged his hand against her face, but like that.
Okay.
Like smudged it.
Like rubbing his fist on her?
Yeah, like rubbing. Mm-hmm.
You're face to face with Ms. Redlick, right?
Yes.
Nothing covering her face?
Right.
Did you observe any injuries on her?
No.
She detailed how their relationship was mostly great, but the incidents of domestic abuse had started long before they moved to Memphis, and before she found out about Michael's infidelity.
I remember I made an offensive comment, which I wouldn't make today. I called him, I said at least he wasn't Jewish and cheap. And he backhanded me in the face and mouth and my mouth started bleeding and my nose started bleeding. And we were in the car at this point. And so when I got to the red light, I wanted to get out of the car. And he grabbed me and I grabbed him back. And we kind of just went back and forth in the car. And we actually got pulled over.
She shared how Michael's behavior got progressively worse, especially when he drank.
He was coming home from work every day and he was pretty agitated. Something was really bothering him. I just remember that it was something, had to do with something with two of his bosses. And he was coming home and he was pouring a drink each night. And I was still pretty young at that point, so I grew up in a house where you eat dinner every night. And I noticed that Michael, when he would drink, he would skip dinner. And so he was doing this by the third night. I started to wonder, are you going to keep doing this? I think I'm just going to go ahead and, if you're not going to eat dinner, I'm just going to go down to the river. There's some, a city walk where they have some shops and eateries and stuff. And when I said that, he got irritated and said, "What, are you mad because I don't want to have dinner with you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, kind of at this point," because I said, "How's the wallowing working out for you?" I said something sarcastic. And I went to head to the door to leave, and he was near the door and he moved in front of the door. And I tried to shove past him. And I feel like at that point, he raises his fist and he just crossed me in the face. And I feel like, I don't know, like he took out every frustration that he had that week on me. And the next thing I remember was actually laying in his lap and he was stroking me and he was apologizing, and he was crying. And I had looked down and I had blood all over me. And he was telling me how sorry he was, that he's going to take me out to a nice dinner tomorrow, and he wanted to go ahead and take care of me, let him take care of me that night.
Witnesses also shared their experiences of the extensive history of the volatile relationship between Michael and Danielle. There are incidents which were reported to the police, and evidence of Michael being prescribed testosterone and a medication for erectile dysfunction. He had become increasingly frustrated and insecure about his poor performance in the bedroom, and he would verbalize his fears that Danielle would want to leave him because of these issues. His insecurity meant that what was once purely physical violence turned into sexual aggression.
He was going to be going out of town for a work function for the week, and so he called me from work the day before and said, "I'm going to bring home some movies and dinner. We're going to spend some time together tonight." And I said, "Okay." So he brought home dinner and alcohol, and we started watching the movie, and there was a love scene. And this happened often. I noticed he would get flustered and kind of start acting strange. And during this particular movie, he approached me and he was aggressive, and he was hurting me. So I moved to a separate couch, and I told him that that wasn't okay. And he just continued to drink through the movie, and he passed out about halfway through. And I finished the movie. And at that point, I just went upstairs to bed. I turned everything off, and I let him know that I was going up to bed. He was snoring. I didn't wake him up, so I went up to bed. And the next morning, he had to leave, get ready to go out of town. And then he came upstairs into the bedroom, and he said, "Why didn't you wake me up last night?"
So when he says that, how does it continue from there?
So I'm in my bathroom at that point, and I'm brushing my teeth, and we're having this conversation. And the next thing I know, something hits me in the back of the head, and I look, and there's a box of tampons on the floor. And I said, "Did you just hit me with that?" And he said, "Yeah, are you calling me a PUSSY?" And I said, "No, what are you talking about?" And he said that I had left the box of tampons on his side of the sink. What was I trying to say? And this just was very strange to me. And I said, "I don't know, they just happened to be there. I didn't do that on purpose. Didn't clean up the bathroom, sorry." And I was upset. And I said, "Maybe you are acting like that, a PUSSY." And I walked away from him. And
How did he react when you walked away?
He said that he came up behind me and grabbed me from behind and started choking me. And I had never been choked that hard before by him.
You did this a second ago. Can you show the jury how, with your hands, do a demonstration
With his
of how
forearm, he just came up behind me and yanked me really hard and pulled me close to his body, and to the point where I couldn't breathe, and he cut off my air and basically was choking me out. I started to pass out. I remember falling, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, is he going to kill me? And I remember reaching up, and I fell to my knees. And the next thing I know, I was sort of aware, and I was looking up at him, and he was just staring at me with this like surprised expression on his face. And he reached out his hand and he said, "I'm sorry." And I just crawled away from him into a corner. And I was really frightened at that point, and I couldn't believe it.
From Danielle's perspective and from witness testimony given by their children, the marriage and life inside the family home was toxic. Both parents were to blame for the behavior, which would be particularly bad when either of them had consumed alcohol. Michael had moved back into the family home just 1 month prior to his death. Danielle claimed this was after she had given in to his demands to return so that she didn't lose custody of her children. But she was realistic about the fact that it was unlikely their marriage would continue much longer. During the time she had filed for divorce, she had begun setting up profiles for herself on dating sites. Despite never meeting with any of the men from the sites, she had exchanged messages with multiple men, and she claimed that the reason they fought the night of Michael's death was that he had discovered one of those messages on her phone. This infuriated Michael when he discovered the messages. At the time, Danielle was out of the house for a brief moment after going to McDonald's for dinner, but when she returned, she would find Michael intoxicated, and in that drunken state, he would come at her violently.
And around 10 p.m., she goes to McDonald's. After McDonald's, she heads home. And Michael is there. He is pounding down the vodka. He grabs her food, and then he goes at her. He is in a rage, and this rage is the angriest that she has ever seen him. It's worse than any of those other incidents. It's different. He pushes her down. She goes to her knees. He pulls her up by the hair. He shoves her to the kitchen island. He chokes. He smothers her. She reaches into a drawer. She grabs a knife. She stabs him 1 time. He is stunned. He releases her, and she runs to the bathroom.
When it came time to testify to her version of events leading to Michael's death, Danielle calmly described what happened on the night of January 11th, 2019.
You find the knife. You're able to open the drawer?
Yes.
You're able to grab the knife?
I pulled it out, yes.
How does it continue from there?
Pulled the knife out, and I don't know if he saw it, but he released my head, so I'm able to move.
Okay. How do you position? So you said that you're able to move a little bit. What position do you go into?
Just slightly more to the left, turning toward him.
Does he back away from you?
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
He says, "What, are you going to stab me?" And I take the knife and I position it and face it toward him.
What does he do at that point?
He immediately just goes for my chin and pushes me back, and I stab him at that point.
How are you positioned at the point of stabbing him?
Basically on the back of the island, and been pinned by him.
At that point, are you able to get out?
After I stabbed him, yes.
Prior to doing that, prior to stabbing him with a knife, are you able to remove yourself?
No.
Are you able to wiggle free?
No.
Are you able to get out without using a weapon?
No, I was trying.
Are you able to talk to him?
No.
The defense rested on claims of years of a toxic and abusive marriage in which Danielle was driven to violence, the act which would end Michael's life. The prosecution, in turn, would also build a solid case against Danielle, accusing her of second-degree murder. From their perspective, the evidence painted a picture of a callous and cold-hearted woman that would say anything to get away with murder. They claimed she wasn't defending herself when she murdered Michael. Rather, she intentionally attacked him as payback for his infidelity. They claimed she was trying to find the easiest way out of their marriage and into the arms of a lover. They questioned every statement she made in relation to the events of that night.
You have told this jury that he has taken a bite of your hamburger, correct?
Yes.
And then he spits it at you,
Yes.
right? It's at this point that you stand up and you grab that McDonald's bag and such, and you begin to throw it on the counter or the island, right?
Right.
Mr. Redlick is behind you,
Yes.
and you feel yourself get hit in the head.
He grabs me and I fall. Then I get hit in the head.
I thought you stumbled.
Yeah, well, he grabbed me first, which I tried to turn, and then I tripped up on my feet and fell.
So you fall, and then it's while you are still on the ground that you feel something hit your head.
Yes.
Could you tell if it was an object or a fist or something else?
Elbow, fist, I don't know what it was.
But not like a blunt object like a bat or a mallet.
I didn't think it was an object, no.
It's at that point that you are pulled back up by your hair. Is that what happens next?
Well, I attempted to get up on my own, and he was too far on top of me, so
Where are you at when he's now too far on top of you?
coming up, trying to get up off the ground.
Where specifically? Where specifically, or is he too far on top of you to get on top of you?
So am I using this?
Permission to allow the witness to use the laser pointer, Your Honor?
Yes, that's fine.
I do this.
I might need to turn it on for you. Here. It's on. Put the laser pointer to where you were whenever he was too far on top of you for you to get up, please.
I'm in this corridor between here and here,
Okay? So,
facing that way, on my knees.
on your knees, facing towards the cabinets on the far wall where the scale is at. Yes? And when you say he's too on top of you to get up, is he actually he's standing over you at this point?
Yes.
And is it this point that he picks you up and by the hair?
No, I'm going to get up like this, and I don't know where exactly he's at, but I know his head slammed into my head.
So as you're getting up, you feel your head on his head.
I feel the back of my head on his head.
Then it's at that point that he takes your head and he slams it onto the stovetop area. Yes?
I wouldn't say right at that point, no. I reached up and with my right hand to pull myself up. And as I'm pulling myself up and trying to turn around to face him, that's when he grabbed my hair and slammed my head onto the...
Slams your head into the stovetop, yes?
Yes.
And at this point, you have a 6'1", 240-pound man pressed against your body, yes?
Yes.
Pressing you against that island.
Yes.
The next thing that you say happens is that he begins to take his fist and he's rubbing it in your face. That was your story, right?
Took my head and he held it down. It was a very awkward position. I couldn't move because it was hurting, and yes, he had me pinned, so he held my head down first.
So your neck is sort of like cricked against the corner of that island at that point?
Yes.
Now he's using this force to keep your head down.
Yes.
And he is still on top of you. His 240-pound body is still pressing you into that island.
Yes.
You can feel the island on your body.
Yes.
This is when the rubbing happens?
Yes.
Because he doesn't hit you.
He doesn't punch me, no. Well, he hit me in the back of the head, but
In the back, where your hair covers, correct?
yes.
On the skin that's exposed, he doesn't strike. And then is it at this moment that he decides that he's going to put his hands over your nose and mouth?
Yes.
The prosecution had a lot of questions for Danielle, asserting that her excuses and explanations didn't add up to self-defense. The fact that Danielle had waited 11 hours before calling 911 was highly suspicious. Why would an innocent victim wait so long to call for help? The delay meant she missed the opportunity to save Michael's life. Danielle claimed that after she had stabbed him and gotten away from his grasp, she hid in the bathroom after their fight because she was scared for her life and didn't know Michael was dying. The prosecution also pointed out her statements on the 911 call that Michael had had a heart attack, and her second explanation that he had stabbed himself during the fight. statements that were admittedly untrue. But Danielle excused her lies by saying that she was in a state of shock immediately after the stabbing and couldn't process her thoughts correctly. She told the court that she was scared and confused and didn't know what to say when she called 911. But there were still more questions to be answered. Investigators found deleted texts on Danielle's phone which she sent while Michael lay dead on the kitchen floor. Her phone also showed evidence of a dating site being accessed while Michael lay there dying on the floor after being stabbed. The prosecution claimed this proved that she couldn't have been in so much shock that she was unable to function and call 911 to get him some help. The prosecution called on Jaden, one of the couple's daughters, to testify. Though her face could not be shown due to her age at the time, Jaden revealed that Danielle was not the victim at home. Rather, she was the instigator of the couple's fights. She further described Danielle as toxic and manipulative. In contrast, she had a very close relationship with her father, whom she described as attentive and loving.
Jaden says, my dad and I were very close. We practically did everything together. He took me out on daddy-daughter dates all the time. We were very close. I told him everything. Prosecutor, what was your relationship like with your mother? Jaden, very toxic, very manipulative. Prosecutor, what was the relationship like between your parents? Jaden, very toxic, tumultuous, very rocky. Yeah, it was not a good relationship, very rocky. Prosecutor, who was the primary source? Jaden, my mother. Prosecutor, why do you say that? Jaden, if there was an issue between them, it would be brought up by my mother. Jaden, when he came home, he was very distant, and this is what she's talking about, I believe, the night of. Not very talkative. He was very cold when he came home. Prosecutor, did you sense tension? Jaden, yes. Prosecutor, did it turn into an argument? Jaden, yes. It was very rare for me to see him get angry and upset. That night, he told me he was sorry, that he loved me, and he wished I hadn't seen him like that. The next day, I went to school, and those were the last words we ever exchanged. I didn't answer him then. Jaden, the last thing I said to him was when they were arguing the night before. Jaden, I received a text from my mom saying she was dealing with something here and that it was best for me to stay at my friend's another night. I thought that was odd because my mom usually wanted to pick me up right after a sleepover. Prosecutor, when was the next time you spoke to your mother? Jaden, sometime later that week. I believe she called me from the hospital. Prosecutor, did she tell you what happened to your father? And this is important, folks. Listen, Jaden, no, I don't think so. Prosecutor, did you later ask her what happened to your father? Jaden, I remember her exact words were, the autopsy said he had a heart attack. Prosecutor, I have no other questions for this witness.
When the prosecution rested its case, it was not clear how the jury would find in the matter. Both the defense and prosecution had painted vastly different pictures of Danielle Redlick and her motives for stabbing Michael and covering up the crime. Both sides admitted that the marriage had been toxic and unhappy for a number of years, but it was up to the jury to decide whether they believed the testimony of a battered woman who felt she was driven to murder in order to save her own life, or would they side with the prosecution who presented the voice of a victim who could no longer defend himself. Did they believe that he was struck down by a deceitful and calculating murderess who was only concerned for herself? The trial broadcast internationally, and internet forums were divided on how the jury would find the case. After just 2 days of deliberations, the courtroom was completely silent when the verdict was read.
In the Circuit Court of the Ninth Judicial Circuit in and for Orange County, Florida, case number 2019 CF 18460, State of Florida versus Danielle Justine Redlick. Verdict as to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. So say we all. Signed, juror badge number 283, foreperson.
In response to the acquittal, Danielle and Michael's daughter Jaden gave an emotional statement to the court, which was read by her attorney.
I want to start this off by saying the only reason I am not personally reading this statement to you all myself is because I simply do not ever want to be in a room with Danielle Drohan ever again. I feel as though there has been absolutely no justice served from my father or his family, including myself and my younger brother. It takes a lot for me to talk about these things and be so vulnerable in front of total strangers. So I please just ask that you all listen to me and please take my feelings into consideration. Since I was about 7 years old, I have endured insane amounts of trauma. This trauma all stems from the same thing, Danielle Drohan. And yes, I'm referring to her as her first name and maiden name because I feel as though she should not even have the privilege of having the same last name as me or my father. I refuse to call her mother because she was never a decent mother figure to me. There were a great deal of things I was not permitted to say in court when I was testifying, which I feel is absolutely insane. I still am unable to even scratch the mere surface of the trauma I am referring to. All I want is justice for my father. It breaks my heart into a million pieces over and over to hear people side with such an abusive, horrible person and then continue to bash on a dead man who isn't here to defend himself. Sure, my dad was no angel and definitely had faults, but he was the kindest, most caring person, and I'm sure the other people who had the chance to know him would vouch for that. He was so kind, gentle, and he never laid a hand on a single person in my family, not myself, Sawyer, or Danielle. I don't even remember him spanking me. My dad always advocated for love and acceptance. He loved everyone and treated everyone the way he wanted to be treated. He was a great man with great values and loved his family. He would never hit a woman. He took my brother and I to so many different ball games, always took me out on our father-daughter days, and he was always in a good mood. Him and I used to watch Saturday Night Live together every Saturday for 5 years straight. He took me and Sawyer to the movies all the time and made sure we were always happy, fed, and well taken care of. He always stood up for others. He always wanted to joke around and play whatever game or talk about literally anything. He loved to talk, people watch, and get to know people. He loved others, and everyone loved him. He was not a bad person. I am so angry about the way he has been portrayed, so extremely angry. He was the best dad I ever could have asked for. I remember at certain points, I would imagine Sawyer and I staying with him full time if my parents were to divorce. I have no regret in saying that, and I mean it wholeheartedly. It absolutely breaks my heart into a million pieces that Sawyer has to grow up without him. I do too, but Sawyer no longer has the amazing dad to show him how to grow up and be just like him. We are both extremely heartbroken to have our pops ripped from our world so suddenly and to have been lied to about it for so long after. We miss our pops so much. I would do anything to bring him back. Someone took him from our world and ruined our childhoods, let alone the start of our lives and futures. We have endured so much since he was taken from us that it has been difficult to process a natural grieving process. We have suffered such incredible amounts of trauma to the point where our bodies have reacted to it. I have had nightmares for the past 3 years about Danielle, and more specifically about certain decisions she has made. Sawyer has nightmares too. I have developed a near fear of being murdered. I have had phases of extreme paranoia, and I've gone through phases where I've been so depressed over the situation that I was unable to take care of myself for a long time. I've lost a great amount of weight, and for a while, I would get extremely triggered and break down over someone even saying the words dad or parent. I've had an entire school gossip about me and my situation, as most of Winter Park. People recognize my last name and often already know about this so-called news story that is my life. I lost everything at once, and it was broadcasted to the world, and I have always given the short end of the stick. I am just now getting to be okay again, but this reopened so many wounds that I genuinely thought could start to heal from. You may all be fooled by the incredible mask this woman presents to you all, but I am not. My father did not get away in time. I am not worried. I am so worried for my brother. Judge, please make some kind of stipulation that Danielle not be allowed near myself and Sawyer, so we don't have to be re-traumatized like we have been already. We're both settled into our new life without our dad, and we want to be left in peace. It took us a while to get here, and we deserve that at the very least.
While Danielle was acquitted of murder, she still faced sentencing for the other crimes of which she had been found guilty. She was due to be sentenced for tampering with evidence, as investigators had proven she had cleaned up the blood and moved Michael's body after his death.
According to the crime scene pictures and evidence, bloodstains were smeared throughout the home. You used bleach and other cleaners to clean what looked like a horror scene. Crime scene photographs also showed where you left the cleanup towels and a bucket of colored water. The blood pattern expert testified that typically blood patterns could tell a story or explain the circumstances surrounding a homicide crime scene like this, but not so in your case. The expert also testified that as a result of your conduct, it was virtually impossible to determine the exact circumstances surrounding Michael Redlick's death. The scene was tampered with so much so that the blood evidence was of little to no value to determine what happened between the night of January 11th of 2019 and mid-morning, January 12th of 2019. You have already been adjudicated guilty of count 2, tampering with physical evidence. And so for that conduct, I will sentence you to 364 days in the Orange County Jail with credit for 364 days time served. That's going to be followed by a period of 12 months of probation. You will report to probation by 3 p.m. The office is on the 7th floor beside courtroom 7B. Within the first 30 days, you will sign up for and you will submit to a mental health evaluation and complete the evaluation and any required treatment within 12 months. I will impose court costs, and there is also a public defender lien that should be imposed.
Court costs of $418.
Mr. Parnell and Ms. Conlon, for the public defender lien, what do you feel is an appropriate cost for your services for the trial and the litigation?
On January 18th, 2022, Danielle was released from the Orange County Jail after having served nearly 1,100 days behind bars while she awaited her trial. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video. Comment down below with your thoughts on the case. Do you think Danielle was rightfully acquitted? Or were the events of that night more sinister than the prosecution was able to prove? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.